Ladies and gentlemen, we are halfway through the Premier League season, or about coming up to halfway. This weekend's fixtures will mark the 19th match day of the season. But coming up to halfway point, it's important to evaluate after everybody's played each other once to see how teams are doing compared to the expectations that they had at the start of the season. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about that, doing a tier list and talking through with you guys on my thoughts on each team, where I think they rank based on what we thought they would do before the season even started, and how I expect this team to finish going into the second half of the season. If you're new to the channel, make sure you like, subscribe, get involved in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you agree with my rankings? Let me know. If there's any things you would change, let me know. If you completely disagree with anything, let me know. I don't agree with everybody. I don't have the opinions that everybody will agree with. I don't have consensus opinions. I might have a few opinions, and probably one that I think a lot of people will be very mad about. But of course, let's get right into it. I want to start off in Crystal Palace, and I'm starting off with Crystal Palace mainly because of the fall off from the end of last season and this season. I think a lot of people coming into the season probably believed that this team was going to do very well, probably around that higher mid-table position, especially considering how Mateta, Elise, and Eze were playing last season under this Oliver Glasner system. But an important thing to point out is that Michael Elise is gone, and I think you're starting to see how good of a player he is with his performances as Bayern Munich, as well as the drop-off from this Crystal Palace team. I think Oliver Glasner was under a lot of pressure at the start of the season, but now he's probably starting to figure things out. As a result of all those factors, I think I'm going to put Crystal Palace in E. I don't think it's been absolutely dreadful, but it's been pretty poor. So I'm going to keep them in E. Next up, we're going to move on to another London-based club, and we're going to go to Tottenham Hotspur. Before the season, a lot of people were saying that Tottenham were going to finish really high in the table. And for me, it never made any sense because this was a team that finished 5th last season and did not improve their squad whatsoever. Okay, they signed Dominic Solanke, but those were not really the main areas they needed to improve. I think Dom Solanke is a very good striker, and he has helped the team overall. But the fact they didn't go out and buy a proper left winger to replace an aging human son, they didn't go out and get proper midfielders to replace someone like Yves Bissouma and Bentancur, who's always injured. Go out and get proper center backs who are consistently fit, unlike Van de Ven and Christian Romero, and go and get proper fullbacks, unlike Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro. It doesn't really make any sense to me. And just stubbornness to play in games where they're being run through game after game, and he continues to play this high line. It frankly makes no sense to me. I think Tottenham have been so bad. And for some reason, people are not really talking about it. People are talking more about a team we'll come on to, Manchester United, a lot more than they're talking about Spurs. And the difference in the points is not a lot. As a result, I'm going to put Spurs in D. And we move on to the aforementioned Manchester United. And with Manchester United, it's an interesting one because you have the Erik ten Hag era and then you have the Ruben Amorim era. And I think the Erik ten Hag era, you could generally have given it an F or an E. But under Ruben Amorim, I think there's a lot of nice things that I'm seeing from this team. Obviously, he doesn't have his players yet, so I don't think it's time for you to really criticize him and delve deep into what is going on and his tactics and whether he's applying them correctly to this team. I don't think he has his players yet. But tactically speaking, I think there's a lot of good things to see in this team. I think once he gets his players, I think Manchester United will definitely be a force to be reckoned with. But if we're talking about the results, they've not been good enough. Again, with Manchester United, for many years now, they haven't been good enough. But this is really bad. 5 points away from the relegation zone. I mean, it's poor. I mean, sorry, not 5 points away from relegation zone. 5 points away from Everton, and I believe 7 points or 8 points away from the relegation zone. But even that, 5 and 8 points. This is Manchester United we're talking about. This isn't a lower table team. This is Manchester United, and we're talking about relegation zone in December, going on January. Not good enough. I think for Manchester United, I have to give them an E. And with Fulham, it's a very interesting one with Marco Silva. They've been banded as the band of misfits, a group of players who have not really thrived or succeeded anywhere else, but have come together at Fulham and are starting to do really good things. Emil Smith-Rowe, Reece Nelson, Alex Iwobi, so on and so forth, Andreas Pereira. And I think this Fulham team is just really, really well coached. I think they don't have fantastic players, but when you look at the way the manager sets them up, they're difficult to break down. They're good in transition. They're good in build-up play. They're very intense in the press. I think this Fulham team is so well set up in many facets of the game. And as a result, that's why you see them so high up in the table. Marco Silva is just a top quality manager. And I think when you have a top quality manager in charge of average to good players, you're going to see good things. Fulham, I'd have to give Fulham a B. They're just so resolute. Their game against Chelsea as well. Chelsea are the best team in the league at home, and Fulham went there and beat them. So this is not a team to be sniffed at. Fulham B for me. From high-flying Fulham, we move on to low-struggling Southampton. And with Southampton, I have a very big problem with these guys. And my main problem is just the stubbornness. I think coming into the league, we all knew these guys were getting relegated. If we're being completely honest with each other, we knew these guys were being relegated. Sorry to my Southampton fans if there's any of you here, but I think even you guys knew that. But then I think it's completely emphasized when you see the way they played when they came into the league. So naive, so adventurous, so brave. And it's nice and all to be brave and play your style of football. That's fine. But when you see it doesn't work in the first game, which was a 1-0 defeat to Newcastle against 10 men for majority of the game, by the way, in a game that they controlled, but they never really looked like penetrating. And then it doesn't work the next game against the likes of Nottingham Forest, the likes of Manchester United, and then against Brentford. And you're playing out of the back and you're getting burnt for it. It's not like you're playing out of the back and you're breaking the press, but then maybe you're losing in the physical duels or you're losing just due to individual brilliance. You're losing these games because you're playing out of the back and losing the ball in dangerous areas of the field. You have to adapt. You have to change. And there's varying opinions on this team and varying opinions on Russell Martin, but I can't even blame him. The person I blame is Vincent Kompany. Honestly, I blame Vincent Kompany because he has pushed this idea to all managers that if you keep on pushing your agenda, if you keep on pushing your plan, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how many games you lose, someone will come and get you. And Bayern Munich got Vincent Kompany. And now he's reaping the benefits of the nonsense that he did at Burnley last season. So now other managers are probably believing that, oh, if I just stick to my ideals, if I stick to my principles, if I keep playing this swashbuckling football with awful players, I can get a big team to come for me. I'm sorry, brother. That's not how it works. Stick to being resolute, push your defenders back, play the ball high, win second balls, and survive. Win a few points, then you can play that style of football. Establish yourself in the league, then you can play that style of football. Not when you've just come into the league. No way. F for me. F for me. Because they're not even trying. They're not even trying. And that brings me on to Ipswich, another team who's in that relegation area of the table. And at least with Ipswich, you can see the vision. They're actually trying to survive. They're being resolute defensively. They have good transition players. They have talented players in Amari Hutchinson. They have Leif Davis bombing down that left-hand side. You have Liam Delap, who's going to get you 5 to 10, maybe even 15 goals in the league. And you can see it. But they just don't have the quality. And there are some games I've watched Ipswich this season, and they didn't deserve to lose, but they've lost. And that just comes down to individual abilities because this league, I say it again, it's a good league. It is a good league. So Ipswich, I can't really hate on them. At least they're giving it a go. At least they're trying to survive. At least they're not being naive like Southampton and genuinely giving it a go. For me, Ipswich, I'll put them in E. I'll put them in E. You look at the quality in the squad and how well they've played against some certain teams. Liverpool in the first day, I thought they gave it a real go. Arsenal, just yesterday, I think they gave it a real go. Ipswich E for me. But speaking of Arsenal, we move on to the game that was actually played yesterday. Ipswich versus Arsenal. We move to the London side of the fixture. And with Arsenal, I think there's so many perspectives you could have with Arsenal. You guys know my thoughts on Arsenal. I don't like this team, right? I don't like this team. And the reason I don't like them is not an agenda thing. I frankly could care less about Arsenal. But it's the fact that you look at someone like Mikel Arteta and the way they were playing football in that 22-23 season. Oh my goodness. It was poetry in motion. It was champagne football to all my people who drink out there. It was incredible. You know, you had Saka and Odegaard and Ben White on the right side, the triangles between them. You had Granit Xhaka, you had Martinelli, you had Zinchenko. And now it's just robotic football, set pieces. And I'm not even going to emphasize the set pieces because set pieces is a valid way of trying to get to goal. But other than the set pieces, they don't look like there's any way of them scoring. You look at their game against Ipswich yesterday. Snooze fest. Genuinely, I'm not even saying this to be rude or to offend anybody. I was watching the game and I genuinely fell asleep. I genuinely fell asleep on my couch, dozed off. Dozed off for about 25 minutes, woke back up. I saw Yuri and Timber on the ball. I said, oh, this game is still 1-0. They're not, they don't excite you. There's nothing there. It's like, it's the same thing every time. And now you have Bukayo Saka injured for, what is it now, 2 months? They're saying it's even more than 2 months. Hey, man, Arsenal fans. And I remember at the start of the season, I said, Calafiori, you're signing Calafiori to close the gap to Manchester City. You finished, what was it, 3 points, 2 points behind Man City, and you're signing Calafiori to close the gap when you have attackers who don't score goals? Calafiori and Marino? And Arsenal fans were saying the system will figure it out. The system will embed them in and will win the league. All right, then. It's interesting to see. Arsenal, they've been so poor for me. Yeah, they're second in the league. Yeah, I believe they're 9 points behind Liverpool if Liverpool win their game in hand, but they've not moved me at all this season. Chelsea have been more entertaining to watch than them. I'd even go as far as to say Nottingham Forest have been more entertaining to watch than them. But I guess when you have a resolute defense, Arsenal are going to find a way to win games, and they probably will end up finishing second because they're more experienced than Chelsea. But win the league, I don't see it. I really don't see it. Arsenal, once a team that I used to love watching every single week, but now it's like I'm battling to watch them, you know? So for that, I'll put them in C. For the expectation, because in 22-23, it was champagne football. In 23-24, it was champagne football mixed with, the dark arts, mixed with the set pieces. Now it's purely just set pieces and efficiency. There is no sense of exciting, stylish football involved anymore. It's all gone. It's completely and utterly gone. And it's a shame that just because Mikel Arteta lost the league title in the last 2-3 games in the 22-23 season, he's now resorted to playing like this. It generally doesn't make any sense to me. From North to East London, we move to the Hammers. Come on, you Irons. And Jared Bowen's special boys. Jared Bowen, that's my guy. If those of you don't know, I've probably not really expressed that on this channel, but I love Jared Bowen. I just love his tenacity. I love the way he plays football. Just so efficient. But we're not talking about Jared Bowen. We're talking about West Ham United and Julian Lopetegui. How you're still in the job? You need to teach some of us, man. How this guy's not been sacked, I have no idea. But I think West Ham are starting to figure things out. I think when you have a big injury like you have had to Mikel Antonio, it's going to be difficult to fight. Nicholas Füllkrug has not been the striker they thought he was going to be. I think with West Ham, it's a difficult situation because you can see the quality in the squad, but for some reason, it's just not working. I don't know why. You watch the games and it still feels as though they're stuck in between. Do we want to play stylish football or do we want to be a bit more pragmatic and secure results, especially in this moment that they're in where they can't buy a result? It's a difficult one because I don't think they've been better than Spurs. I don't think they've been worse than Crystal Palace. Neither do I think they've been worse. Neither do I think they've been better than Manchester United. But I think them and Manchester United are neck and neck. But then when you take into account the expectation around the clubs, I think coming into the season, a lot of people probably thought West Ham would be just underneath those Europa League positions or even in those Europa League positions, pushing for top 4. Let's not forget they signed Somerville, they signed Max Kilman, they signed Nicholas Füllkrug. These are big signings. They signed, I believe it was Guido Rodriguez from Real Betis. These were big signings. Even Jean-Claude Todibo from Nice. So I think with West Ham, based on the expectation, it's been poor. And I think I'll put them there with Manchester United. I'll put them in E. I'm happy with that. From one W, we move to the other one. We move to Wolverhampton Wanderers. And with Wolverhampton Wanderers, Gary O'Neill's been sacked. I believe that was about a week and a half ago or so. And I think the players just completely let him down. I think towards the end, you saw the scuffles, you saw the fights. That was a group of players that were not listening to the manager anymore. It was clear. They needed to get him gone. I don't think it was a clear indictment on him as a manager. I don't think it was a clear reflection. I don't think Gary O'Neill was as bad as the team were making him seem. But I think when the players are not listening to what you're saying anymore, you're kind of done. Like, you're screwed. There's nothing you can really do. There's nothing to revive the situation. And getting a new manager was the right thing to do. Their start to the season was really bad. And I think their fixtures were really bad as well. A lot of people will say it's excuses, but when you actually watch the games and you watch what is happening in these games, I think a lot of the games, Wolves were really, really good. And they were kind of unlucky to lose some of those games and draw some of those games. First game that comes to my mind is the Manchester City game. So for me, I think Wolves started the season, they weren't as bad as their point tally made it actually seem. I think they were a lot better than the points tally made it seem. But it's difficult to put them any higher than F. I want to put them in E, but I think based on the results, if we're talking about performances, E is definitely warranted. But if we're talking about the results and you're looking at the feeling around the club and probably the expectation coming into the season, of course, they lost two of their biggest players in Pedro Neto and Max Kilman, but I don't think people thought Wolves would be in the thick of a relegation battle. I don't think anybody thought that. So for that reason, I'm going to put them in F. Do I put them in F? I'm going to put them in F. Yeah, I'm standing on it. I'm putting them in F. But from one team that a lot of people didn't expect to get relegated to a team that everybody, and I mean, okay, maybe not everybody, but most people thought was going to get relegated, and that's Nottingham Forest. Now with Nottingham Forest, I think this is just the culmination of when you buy so many players that something has to stick. And when you get a manager who just does the basics. And I watched a video very recently about Sean Dyche talking about his 4-4-2 principles and the way in which he spoke about football and the way he spoke about his tactics. It was just so, I don't want to say elementary because that sounds offensive, but it was so simple in how he tries to get his points across to the players. Because one thing you need to understand in this elite level of football is that these players are all good players. But what separates the best from the good is quality or work rate. And I think with Sean Dyche's teams, you always see that work rate, and he emphasized it throughout the video in which he was talking about his principles. And I think with a team like Nottingham Forest, you see it in every single game they play. Their wingers are so good defensively. Their back four has been so resolute, so strong. They're incredibly good in transition. These are the simple fundamentals in football. Be difficult to beat. Take your chances when you go the other way. Be intense in the midfield. Win your individual duels. Win your flick-ons. Chris Wood is literally a target man, a dream target man. Brings other people into play. Your Anthony Elangas, your Callum Hudson-Odois, your Morgan Gibbs-Whites. He brings these guys into the game. You have James Ward-Prowse, who gives you another dimension with his set-piece taking. Nottingham Forest are a very well-coached team. Nuno Espirito Santo continued to show why his time at Spurs being cut so short made no sense to anybody. And I think there's only one place for Nottingham Forest, and that's A. Third place in the league in this moment, or I believe they're fourth at this time, actually, after Arsenal won against Ipswich, but just such a good team. Ola Aina's playing his best football he's ever played in his life. You've got Milankovic, you've got Murillo, who came in from Serie A, just so strong in defense. You've got that midfield of Yates, Morgan Gibbs-White in front of them, who's really revolutionized his career. I think it's just incredible what we've seen from him. And it's actually quite ironic how Morgan Gibbs-White at Wolves couldn't get a game under Nuno. Okay, he was playing, but he wasn't at the forefront. And a lot of people probably thought that he would be the next man in line for Wolves, sort of be like what Mateus Cunha is to them now. But he never really got that opportunity, and he chose to actually leave the club to gain that opportunity. And now he's probably one of Nuno Espirito's most important players in the squad. So it's an interesting one. Nottingham Forest, A for me. I don't think anybody expected this. If I could even put him in S, I would. I would put him in S because they've been ridiculous. But from one free spending team to another, we move on to Chelsea. And Chelsea, this is a team that I've kind of, kept my thoughts on them quite quiet because I said, let me see the process, Things can change. And for a long time, I used to believe, what are Chelsea even trying to achieve here? What's the game plan? What are they trying to do here? Because you're signing a bunch of players, you're signing a bunch of average players, and you're not really getting anywhere. And you're losing games, and the vibe around the club isn't right, and your manager doesn't really know who he wants, and you've got 40 players, but in actual fact, only 15 of them are playing. What's the plan here? But it shows that having a good manager is paramount to a team's success. And with Chelsea, you're seeing that this season with Enzo Maresca. We could talk about so many players. Could talk about Cole Palmer, who continues to show his level and continues to grow his stock every single game. Nicholas Jackson, who's come leaps and bounds since his arrival from Villarreal. Jadon Sancho, the lost child from Man United, is actually starting to show a little bit of something. Pedro Neto from Wolves, or even people lower down the pecking order, such as, Gabriel Vega, who everyone was laughing at when he came out against Man City. Everyone was saying, who even is this guy? Mark Gui, and Christopher Nkunku, Joao Felix. I mean, when you spend £1 billion on a squad, you'd expect that they would have good squad depth, and that's exactly what they have. But I don't think anybody expected them to be this good. Only one place for Chelsea for me. As much as it hurts me to say it, because I don't think spending £1 billion on your squad is a reasonable way of doing football, or conducting yourself as a club. But hey, man, what works. From Chelsea, we move to my favorite team in the Premier League, and that's Brighton and Hove Albion. And Brighton and Hove Albion has been an up and down season for them. They started the season really, really brightly. Fabian Herzler was really showing a lot of good things. Joao Pedro was on fire. Yakuba Minte was showing everybody that Brighton just know how to find good players from anywhere. Newcastle this time being, you had people such as Vifa who were coming into the squad. Matt O'Reilly, who's come in recently and has been incredible. Julio Enciso as well. Igor at the back with Van Hecke and Lewis Dunk. An incredible pool of defenders to pick from for your center back pairing. Or even Tariq Lamptey, who's come up leaps and bounds recently. Pervis Estupiñán continues to be one of the best left backs in the league. And Brighton are just a well-run club. They've got incredible depth as well. And I think the thing with Brighton is just you don't know where you're going to get with them. It's pretty up and down, up and down, up and down. 1 week they're good, 1 week they draw, 1 week they lose, and you never really know where you're going to get. I think Brighton is literally the illustration of the modern-day Premier League. It's just filled with teams that are good, but are they good? They're good, but are they good? Brighton, they're good, but are they good? Brentford, they're good, but are they good? Newcastle, they're good, but are they good? All of these teams. As a result of all those things, I think I'm gonna put Brighton in C. I think they've been better than Tottenham, but have they been as good as Arsenal based on expectation? I think based on expectation, I would have expected Brighton to be a bit more consistent, especially considering how much money they've spent. But at the same time, it's a tough league, and that those bunch of teams from about 5th till about 12th, I think the gap between them is like 4 or 5 points. And if you go on a good run of games, as Newcastle have shown, you can climb up the league very easily. So I'm tempted to put Brighton in B based on expectation, but I think C is fine. I'm gonna leave them in C. But from Brighton, we move on to a team that plays completely different from Brighton. We move on to Sean Dyche's Everton. 4-4-2, put the ball in the back of the net, Everton. And with Everton, I think a lot of people probably thought they were doomed this year, as did I. And they're still in a tricky situation, but I think when you've got a team like Southampton, when you've got a team like Leicester City, when you've got a team like Ipswich, even though I think Ipswich will go down with a fight, I think Everton might be safe for another year yet again. Everton are just, what you're getting with Everton. They're going to make the game difficult. If you go to Goodison Park, you're going to fight, you're going to struggle, you're going to hassle. Same stuff from Everton for them. Based on the expectation, I'm going to give them a D, because I think everyone expected them to be where they are now. So I'm going to give them a D. I don't think they've been terrible, but I also don't think they've been incredibly good. I think they've shown this season that they're going to stay up, and they're going to make any game difficult for anybody in the league. So I'm going to put them in D. And now we move on to Manchester City, the team that everybody's been talking about. 1 win in 13. Manchester City, you guys keep an eye out. I have a video coming out on them soon. Very soon. Manchester City, 1 win in 13. Pep Guardiola's man. 4-time Premier League champions in a row. 6 in the last 7. 1 win in 13. I think with Manchester City, there's so many things you could talk about. Erling Haaland not having any impact in games if he's not scoring. Phil Foden, basically being the scapegoat of this team, even though he's actually, in my opinion, putting in pretty decent performances. You've even got the likes of Josko Vardio's confidence going down a cliff. Savinho still not registering a single goal despite playing about 30 games this season. Doku's inconsistent as ever. Kevin De Bruyne's injury, all added on top of Rodrigo's ACL injury. So, terrible situation for Manchester City. I think based on the expectation, you have to give them an F, right? Because I know you want to be respectful to the champions, and that's fine. But being in this position at this point for me is ridiculous. Because if we're being completely honest here, if some teams start to pick up some points, and I'm looking at that table, and we talked about it, how good this league is and how congested that area of the table is. If Bournemouth start to get into a good run of form, if Brighton get into a good run of form, if Aston Villa get into a good run of form, we could see Manchester City as low as 11th. 11th. This is the Premier League champions we're talking about. 4 times in a row. 11th. It's an F for me. Nothing else. There's no consideration here. This is a team that people thought would win the league again, and they're sitting in 7th position at this point. 11th. It's an F. It's an F. Easy F. From the team who everybody thought was going to win the league, probably comfortably actually, to the team that a lot of people did not expect to be running away with the league in this current moment, and that's Liverpool. And with Liverpool, there's only one place I can put him, and that's an A. And I'm going to put him at the top. Actually, no. Nottingham Forest is more impressive. I'm going to put them at the top. And the reason I put them there is, I mean, top of the Premier League, top of the Champions League, semifinals of the Carabao Cup. What else is there really to be said? Mohamed Salah is playing like a man possessed. You've got Cody Gakpo reliving his PSV Eindhoven days on that left-hand side. Luis Diaz is really running it back to the Porto days. Virgil van Dijk is playing like Ballon d'Or nominee Virgil van Dijk. Ibrahim Konate before his injury was impenetrable. I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold is creating for fun. Only weakness in this team is probably Andy Robertson. This Liverpool team is just, I mean, the only game they've lost this season is Nottingham Forest at home, and Nottingham Forest is ahead of them in the tier list. So, that checks out. So for me, nothing really much to be said about this team. Liverpool in the A. Best team in the league by far. By far. From Liverpool, we move on to my personal favorite team in the league based on just the way they've played this season. That has to be Bournemouth. Andoni Iraola's man. And for me, I have to put them in B. I'll put them in B. Ahead or below Fulham. It's a tricky one. I think because, of course, Fulham have done a lot of good things. I'll put them ahead of Fulham. Because I think Bournemouth actually have the quality to break that European football barrier, which I don't think Fulham will. And the way that they play football, you've got Antoine Semenyo, you've got Tavernier, you've got Evan Nilsson, who's replaced Dominic Solanke. Obviously, he hasn't replaced the number of goals, but his impact in the game all round is just incredible. You look at someone like Erling Haaland, who has no impact in the game if he's not scoring. Evan Nilsson, in some moments, there was a game in which he won 3 penalties. Those basically count as 3 assists, and he didn't get a single goal in the game. But that's just how you impact a game as a striker. You've got Højlund in defense, and even Zabarni as well. You've got Milos Kerkez, who is just running up and down every single game. I mean, Bournemouth are just a very, very good team, very intense team. I watched their game against Manchester City back, and goodness me, they were so intense. And there's a reason why they're as high in the table as they are. B for me. Then we move on to Leicester City. Ruud van Nistelrooy's boys as of now, Steve Cooper's former boys. And I think with Leicester City, it was a similar situation with Ipswich Town. We thought they would go down pretty comfortably, but we did believe they would give a fight. And I think they've done that to a certain extent. Jamie Vardy is somehow still being relied upon at the age of I think Jamie Vardy is 36 now, still surviving off Red Bulls. And somehow they're still relying on this guy. For me, for Leicester City, I give it an E. Of course, the expectation was still to finish in those relegation zone area, but I think it's just a really uninspiring team. I mean, every single time I've watched them, I've never left the game thinking, oh, okay, I can see what they're trying to do. Never at any point have I said that. You look at their game against Liverpool, after they scored the first goal, they were there for the taking. Or even their defeat a few weeks ago against Newcastle. It's just pretty meh, just pretty average. Or even their defeat against Wolves, a Wolves team who have not won a game in God knows how long before that game, and they just look so amateur against Wolves. So for me, it's an E, comfortable E. But from Ruud van Nistelrooy, we'll move on to Unai Emery, and for Unai Emery, I think it's a pretty interesting season. I think everybody expected a drop-off from last season, especially considering now they have to play Champions League football. But I think this drop-off is being exacerbated just because of their position in the table. But again, I go back to that point. This league is very, very good. Everybody's in and around the same areas. And if Aston Villa go on a good run, then you'll see them back in those top 4, top 5 positions. So considering everything, I think Aston Villa is a C. I think Morgan Rogers is a real positive from this season. John Duran as well. Just two of the best young players in world football right now. Yuri Tielemans is continuing to show his quality in the midfield. John McGinn is always going to give you that intensity. I think Aston Villa is just a solid team. I expect them to still finish in and around those European positions. Should be interesting to see. I think the European spots is going to be very interesting. The title race, in my opinion, is over. I think Arsenal and Chelsea will finish off that top three. And then fourth place, who knows? It could go to anybody from Nottingham Forest to Bournemouth. Even Fulham could be in and around there. Aston Villa. You've even got Tottenham and, of course, Manchester City, the champions. There's about 6-7 teams fighting for those positions. It should be very interesting to see who comes out on top. And for Newcastle, how quickly narratives change, right? Because with Newcastle, I think about a few weeks ago, a lot of people would have probably put them in and around D. You look at the performances where they were losing games and just not winning, just dropping points in games that they shouldn't be dropping points. And a lot of people probably thought that, Eddie Howe, you're on the ropes here, bud. But I think they picked up pretty well. They've gone on a good run of form, draw with Liverpool, beaten Arsenal, draw with Manchester City. Of course, you had that incredible result against Aston Villa 3-0. And I think Newcastle are just in a good position. I think Newcastle as well, I would put them in C. I think and right now they're sitting in 5th position, and I think they could continue to push on. It's a team that is very, very good at home. They're very difficult to beat at home. Away from home, they're still a bit sketchy. You've got Alexander Isak, who's probably the best striker in the league right now. So for Newcastle, I'm going to put them in C. And as for Brentford, I'll put Brentford in D, but I'll put them above both of these lot. And the reason I'll put them there is because with Brentford, they're the best team in the league at home, I believe, behind Chelsea. They only just suffered their first loss at home against Nottingham Forest like a week ago. And that's not really a bad thing because Nottingham Forest are one of the best teams in the league. But with Brentford, I think they really need to work on that away form. It seems like they're scared to play every time they go away from home, which doesn't really make sense to me. They have a good quality squad, and they can give a good game to anybody in this league, as they did to Brighton just a few days ago. So for me, Brentford, I'm going to put them in D. They could crack into this C. If they put in a good few run of games, maybe. But for now, I'll put them in D. And looking at everything, I think I'm pretty happy with this. I think Nottingham Forest, Liverpool, and Chelsea, I'm pretty happy with that. I think these have been the 3 best teams in the league this season, based on the expectation before the season. Of course, Arsenal would be in there. Bournemouth and Fulham, they've been so exciting, so they're going to be in B for me. Arsenal, as I talked about, they don't really move me. But, of course, that's my opinion. But let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. Do you think one of these teams should move up, should move down, or even move down very far? I know a lot of people who would probably say that Arsenal should be an E, if I'm being very honest with you guys. I know a lot of people that would say that. I have Arsenal fans that would tell me that. So let me know down in the comment section below. As I said, if you're new to the channel, make sure you like and subscribe. If you enjoyed the content, make sure you hit that like button. Lets me know what you guys are into. But of course, take care of yourselves.